Building Academy, and we're so excited to be here with James Brennan, who is one of our alum as well as an individual looking at a major career shift. I'll let him tell you what he's all about and what his career path has been thus far. But James, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
It's really my pleasure. I've have nothing but good things to say about the Academy, and it's really a pleasure to be able to keep these connections going as I head into this new career. As you alluded to, and the whole reason I'm here, obviously, is I made a very significant career change, pretty late in my prior career. To pursue something in the construction industry. I graduated from law school in 1991 and worked as an attorney. Really wound my practice down starting in 2018, and didn't bring it completely to close until middle of 2019. So a good 28 years as a practicing attorney. And in that time, I worked a lot with builders and developers, both here in Colorado and also in California. And I came to realize the time that I enjoyed most working as an attorney were the times that I was working closely with those clients. And particularly, it was great, getting out on their job sites. And, unfortunately, in that context, it was almost always trying to figure out some kind of a construction defect issue that had come up. But I really enjoyed that time. And as I reached this period in my life, I was about going on 50 years old when I started thinking about making this change. At that point, I figured, my daughter's heading off to college. I can sort of start winding down my practice a little bit, living a little bit leaner. If I was going to make a change and still have a meaningful period of time for a new career, it was kind of now or never. And that was the thinking that led to me starting to look into the Academy and putting together what I originally envisioned as a 2-year plan for the transition ended up being a little bit shorter, about a year and a half.
Oh, nice. Okay, great.
To make the switch. And, the Academy was really at the heart of it. My original reason for signing up at the Academy was to take the boot camp program. And, I had some hands-on experience just doing a number of home remodels over the years, but no formal training of any kind. And I wanted that kind of hands-on background to kind of inform where I was planning to go in my career, which was project management. But I wanted to have a better understanding of how these homes were actually literally put together before moving into that project management direction. And so that was the original impetus. And then while I was wrapping up boot camp, the Academy entered into the partnership with the Aurora Community College and really beefed up its superintendent and estimating certificate programs. And so I rolled into those programs, did both of them, and the overall combination of those three things, the boot camp, the estimating, the superintendent program, filled in so many blanks and gaps that I had in my background in the industry. Gave me a much better idea of what I was getting into before I irreversibly committed to taking the leap. And it was great, not just the material, but making the connections with faculty and other students in the program. There's such a diverse group of people that go through the Academy, and so there were a lot of folks who would come up through the trades, were working for production builders, who had, really deep knowledge of the business, but were looking to step into a new role. And so to get to know those guys and learn from them, get that experience, build that network, it was just a great opportunity. I mean, I loved coming to those classes.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's great. So practice law, you said for 28 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just reminding everyone, what does the education look like to get into law?
Yeah, so it's an undergraduate degree and then 3 years of law school.
Mm-hmm.
And then really your first 3 years of practice, if you're lucky, you spend those under the wing of a more experienced attorney. I think you're not a fully functional attorney until you've been in the practice for about 4 years, and
Okay.
at that point you're really in a good position to head out on your own. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with large international law firms for about the first 12 to 14 years of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And in that context, I worked with very large developers and production builders on the West Coast. And it was a great education in that end of the business, learning, land use and that very early kind of site development process. Is very law intensive,
Mm-hmm.
environmental studies and all of that kind of thing. So that was my first exposure to the business. And then working for that same client, I went on to do some defect work for them and started
Mm-hmm.
getting more of a hands-on understanding of how structures are engineered and constructed, where things can go wrong. Southern
Mm-hmm.
California, not unlike Colorado, has a lot of troublesome, expansive soil issues. So I learned a lot about soils and
Mm-hmm.
foundations doing that work
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. So, I mean, because as you were practicing law and interacting with these various construction projects, you had this appeal to do project management, and you've had quite a bit of exposure to what project management looks like, and even did a bit of project management as a lawyer in a way.
Yeah, you definitely crossed that line, and particularly when I moved to Colorado, I started working with smaller builders, guys who are doing smaller condo developments in the mountains, custom home builders along the Front Range, and also representing people in defect litigation against some of our, production builders and custom home builders, almost all related to soil engineering issues.
Yeah.
And but yeah, with those smaller builder clients, you absolutely do play a more intimate role in their operations,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really where I got a taste for it. I really
Yeah.
found myself saying, gosh, why am I just not doing this?
Nice. Well, what I like about that is that if someone were to just simply hear an attorney is going to become a construction worker, if they
Yeah,
hear that, they're like, what? How? That's a pretty major change. It sounds like one anyway. And yet the two in your career path have been pretty interrelated, but you got a chance to really get a good taste for what you might rather be doing than whatever it is you were doing.
yeah, for sure. And so in that sense, you're absolutely right. It wasn't like a complete 180-degree different career path. It was more sort of veering off a little bit, into the crossing the line into the business side of
Mm-hmm.
clients that I had been working with.
Yeah.
Although what I realized, about 24 hours into sitting down at my desk at Schneider Building Company was that what I had come to be familiar with as an attorney was probably about 10% of what that job as a project manager really involved.
Yeah.
And but and so, having the background and some of the vocabulary and understanding of how, projects progressed, and obviously everything that I'd learned at the academy was enormously helpful in making that transition. But, I will say, for people who are making, really a completely radical, like I've never thought of construction before, and now I'm thinking about it. It's
Mhm, mhm.
absolutely doable. I mean, it's,
Yes.
because so much of what allows me to um, do well in my current position is just the experience of working as a professional for 28 years.
Mhm.
And I think anyone who's making kind of a midlife career change, has that benefit. And it's not to be underestimated. Knowing how to conduct yourself in a
Mhm.
business environment, how to
Mhm.
communicate effectively,
Yeah.
knowing how to manage any kind of project, right? You
Mhm.
bring those
Mhm.
skills with you, and they're
Right.
enormously helpful.
Right. That's great. I mean, I love that. I think when you get more towards the middle of your career, while you may make, as I'm also familiar with, this major career shift that's daunting and scary and exciting all at the same time, you also bring a set of skills and hopefully a maturity that you didn't have when you were in your early 20s, that can make a shift like this a little more doable.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was I was 24 years old when I sat down as an attorney for the first time, and I remember thinking it I remember this so vividly. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm sitting at my desk in this huge law firm, and I'm thinking to myself, who the hell hires a 24-year-old attorney? You have to be out of your mind. And uh,
oh man.
I'm happy to say I didn't have that same moment switching over into the project management side of construction. I felt much more comfortable
Okay.
transitioning into that new role that I did starting out as a brand new attorney back in the day.
Yeah, what they call that, imposter syndrome, where you feel like I don't belong
Absolutely.
here. Someone made a mistake. Yeah. Nice. Good, good. Well, so what, just rewinding a little bit, you got some exposure to construction and you decided, man, maybe I want to do this instead of what you've been spending most of your time doing. What about construction, building homes or building buildings, appealed to you?
Sure. Since I was a kid, I've always been fascinated with how things are constructed, how they're put together, what makes things work, what's under the surface of
Hmm.
something. How do you make something? That's been a feature of my personality for as long as I can remember. And to my parents' dismay, I was one of those kids who was always taking things apart around the house and
Yeah.
putting them back together with probably varying degrees of success.
Right.
um, and when I was thinking about what to do as a professional career, I thought of going into architecture for a time, um,
Mhm.
and ultimately decided not to go down that track. So it's been kind of a background interest for a long time,
Mhm.
and then seeing it from the business perspective of my clients, it's a fun business. It really is.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's such a cast of characters that you work with and manage, in a general contractor role. Um, there's so much variety in the trades that you work with, in terms of skill and quality and demeanor. It's just this crazy slice of humanity that you interact with, and then
Mhm.
you layer in the government bureaucracy and contract negotiation, and you know dealing with the bank, depending on your role. And there's just so many aspects to the business that are just kind of fun and
Yeah.
interesting and engaging.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's cool. Yeah, I found that just even I find some very attractive things about just the nature of who chooses to build, of the kind of people who choose to build.
Yeah.
It's just they're a really great group to work with. I've really enjoyed the opportunity myself, having come from more white collar type background before. I grew up in a blue collar home. So this is my world as far as what I'm familiar with, but being back in, it's just been great.
Yeah, and you will never find a more optimistic group of people than, builders and
Agreed.
developers, right? Because their entire livelihood, right, depends on things getting better and booming and growing, and right. I mean,
Right.
that's the whole underlying premise of
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
and it's great energy to be around.
Yeah, that's all. I agree, and I find that even with the students that are incoming, because I, as a student recruiter, I'm primarily interacting most with students who are coming into our program, not necessarily going out. But I find even the students that are attracted to take our training and to consider the construction field are some of the most optimistic people out there.
Yeah,
Right now, we're dealing with we're recording this right now, beginning of April, and then we're in the middle of the COVID crisis, and people are losing their jobs, and it's a very difficult situation. We just launched an online version of our boot camp, which takes out a key component, the hands-on training. We are
yeah,
forced to take that out. It's the main reason why people are attracted to that program normally. We taken it out, and still had in just a handful of days 60 students sign up for the online version of the program. When many of them out of work, just still really just plugging forward and super excited to be a part of it.
wow,
And
that's
that
great.
just seems to be the nature of the kind of individuals that work in this industry. So I'm excited to be a part of it too. That's cool. Good. So you're with Schneider right now,
I am.
and what's your position there right at the present?
I am a project engineer, and so at Schneider, we differentiate in the project management side of the business into kind of two areas. Our project engineers are principally focused in what's called buying out the project, getting all the subcontractors in and under contract and on schedule, and then running down all the loose ends that invariably crop up while the project
Mm-hmm.
is being
Mm-hmm.
constructed.
Yeah.
And our project managers, on the other hand, are focused much more on the finance of the project and the budget,
Mm-hmm.
and managing that aspect of it, which is a whole nother skill set. And
Mm-hmm.
so the plan at Schneider, if all goes well, is I'll continue to get my feet wet on the project engineering side, but I'm assuming every month additional finance related
Mm-hmm.
chores, and so I'll transition into more of the project management work and less of the
Mm-hmm.
project engineering over time. Although I have to admit, I think I'm going to miss the project engineering piece, because
Gotcha.
it is very fun.
Cool.
Um,
Oh, that's awesome. There's nothing like waking up and just enjoying going to work. That's cool.
yeah, and I got to say, I got very lucky with Schneider. It's a great group of people.
Cool.
Really a
That's
pleasure to
awesome.
work with.
Exciting. So you started with our construction skills boot camp, which at least right now is a 16 class program, either 2 nights a week for 8 weeks, or we have an accelerated version, 4 afternoons a week for 4 weeks. We're doing a 3 week online alternative that was just launched last week because of the COVID-19 situation that we're in. And that's a lot of hands-on training, a lot of like kind of nuts and bolts of construction. You had mentioned that you had done some remodeling work before. What do you say was helpful about getting some kind of hands dirty, hands-on type work with that?
Yeah, the real kind of proof in the pudding piece for me was, I have a friend in Denver who is about my age, and spent the bulk of his professional life as a custom home builder. And these days, he's kind of winding things down, just building a few projects here and there. And he
Mm-hmm.
was doing a small project for himself down in the Springs. He had a little rental property down there. He was going to scrape it and put two new structures onto the lot. And so he heard what I was up to, and he said, "Hey, two people could really build these things." He's like, let's go down to the Springs. Let's build a couple of houses."
Nice.
And so I got down there after the foundations had been poured, and we went, from the foundation up to, roof decking and siding. And, the moment I walked onto that site, I knew everything I was looking at. I understood the foundation system. I could see where the utilities had been stubbed up. I knew they were in the right place. I could recognize that although we had, two relatively small structures on a pretty small lot, they had two different foundation systems, and I understood, the reason behind that. And then as we, put this thing together, everything made sense. The sequence, I knew the
Mm,
sequencing, I knew the terminology. It was a huge confidence builder. And
yeah.
and and then when I joined Schneider right at the end of working on those two homes with my friend, it was the same experience. To be able to look at a proposal from a subcontractor, read it against the blueprints, be able to make sense of that, be able to see if the scope in the proposal tracked with what was in the plans. Did we have any gaps? Did we have any overlap, any extras? All of that fundamental knowledge was there. And I wouldn't have had that without the academy.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's great. On that similar note, if someone listening to this were thinking about a major career change, if they've got a lot invested into another career, so if they've got education,
Yep.
time, seniority, and the pay raises that come with all that,
Yep.
and they're looking at a major career shift, and they're thinking, I really want to do this, but the one thing holding me back is the pay issue. And like
Yeah.
I could be starting pushing a broom, with
Yeah.
a fresh out of high school individual.
Yeah.
Um, and how in the world do I even pay my bills? Sometimes you might have a spouse in the house that can help carry some of that, or maybe you can simplify your entire life, live out of a suitcase. But just how do you how would you say there's two questions here. One is how would you address that issue for someone who's nervous about that? And then secondly, how would be the best road towards getting into a better pay situation, knowing that you might take a cut initially?
Yeah.
What's the most rapid way to get to a better spot?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and it was absolutely a major concern of mine. And in for me, with at that time, I was starting to ramp down my practice. Uh, I had built a small law firm with two other partners. We'd grown the practice up to 10 attorneys and support personnel over a period of years, and it was doing quite well. And as I got ready to make this change, I I left that firm that I had started, kind of downsized my practice to a solo practice, cut my overhead dramatically, and with the plan being that I would ramp that down over time as I got closer to completing um, the education through the academy.
Mhm.
And timing wise, it all really worked out quite well. I think I had two clients that I was still handling a couple of matters for when
Mhm.
I started with Schneider, and about 2 months in, I'd wrapped up those two matters. But whatever you're going to do, whether you're working for a company where you can make the change more abruptly, you don't have to wind down existing clients, like I had to do. I would say focus on the numbers early on. Get your
Mhm.
head around that, because it will
Mhm.
alleviate a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to know what you're getting into and what you're dealing with, what your overhead's going to be, how much of a cut you can take. And for me, one piece that I guess kind of turned out to be fortuitous was um, I went through a divorce in 2013 and downsized into a condo. And
Mhm.
then as I started kicking this idea around, I didn't upsize again. I just kind of kept
Yeah.
kept
Yeah.
the overhead low,
Right. Right.
um, and started making a plan. uh, and you absolutely, it's inevitable that you're going to take a cut making the
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And but what I told myself was, this change wasn't really so much about the money.
Mm-hmm.
For a guy like me, who's well into a first career that's long and fairly successful and lucrative. You're not making the change to try to make more money. You're making the change because you want to change, and
Right.
that
Right.
change has value. And if you don't feel that, if you don't really feel that in your bones, then
Yeah.
you're probably not going to be happy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went from fancy office environment to what my daughter describes as you work in a garage, because um, Schneider's infrastructure is they build lovely things for other people, but boy, they keep it really really lean in their own shop, and so
Yeah. Nice.
it's pretty
That's
rustic,
great.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, and I couldn't be happier. It's in terms
Yeah.
of a workplace environment, it's the happiest I've ever been, and
Yeah.
that makes up for so much. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
I did. I absolutely took a significant pay cut to make the change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and I think you were alluding to this when you make a change, having come from a background where you've got a lot of experience in some other field, it's easier to move forward in your
Mm-hmm.
new profession. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
You're not learning everything from scratch. You're
Right. Right.
learning the specifics of your position, but you're not learning all that stuff about how do I do well in a corporate environment? How do I
Mm-hmm.
interact with clients successfully? How do
Yeah.
I massage this vendor to salvage a relationship, right? You've got that whole skill set, and
Right. Right.
employers recognize that and they value it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so your career path, you may absolutely start out in the same place as some 24-year-old, um, which is in fact the case at Schneider. I think I was with Schneider about 6 months before we hired in another project engineer who is someone who is a few years out of college and comes from a project management background in the finance industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a kind of status driven person, right, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing can chafe,
Right.
right? We have the same job title and we're working in the same part of the shop, and but you got to be confident in
Mm-hmm.
what you're bringing to the table, which is it's different. You can't underestimate the value of 20 some odd years in a professional
Right.
environment.
Right.
There's a
Right.
whole set of soft skills that come with that
Yep.
translate into any career environment.
That's huge. And I appreciate that you said that employers notice that someone that's nervous about getting into this, one of the things that should comfort them is that they've developed a massive skill set already that does translate to this job, even though it doesn't seem like the professions are anywhere near each other. I think that's really important. That's good.
Yeah,
It sounds like, go ahead.
no, it does translate. And uh, yeah, I won't repeat myself, but yeah, it's definitely the sort of thing where someone who has been seasoned in another career, you kind of learn how to learn new things efficiently in a way that somebody who's just starting a career doesn't. You're someone who has been a professional in another context, even in a new context, will look at something and they will see, okay, this is what matters. This is what's
Mhm.
important. You can your background and experience allows you to hone in on those things, and I think learn more efficiently than
Yeah.
people who are just starting out.
I That's great. That's awesome. And I just want to highlight something else too. If you missed it, I'm sure you didn't. But anyone listening, you had a plan. You had a 2-year plan that ended up being shorter
Yeah,
uh, than you had originally planned. Then you did some math. It's
yeah,
somewhat basic math, but do a little bit of math.
absolutely.
I think that's huge because sometimes, especially when we think about career shifting or going into a new field or changing your life, we think about, this whole fantasy of walking into your supervisor's office and take this job and shove it. And I didn't decide until this afternoon that I was going to do this, and now I'm doing it. And there have been people that have done that. And actually, there's been some people that it ended up over some poverty type situations ended up working out.
Yep.
It can work out that way, but normally you have to have a plan.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly allowed me to rest easier at night. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie, there is a lot of anxiety associated with making this kind of change. There is, and there is absolutely a chance of it not working out.
Right.
I mean, that is a possibility. You gotta, I think you gotta come to terms with that on the front end, right? You gotta say, all right, and so what's my plan if it doesn't work out?
Right.
What's
Right.
where do I go there? Because you got to have some kind of a fallback plan, because you just don't know. You don't know when you get out what the market's going to look like. You don't know if you're going to be in the middle of a crazy pandemic, for instance, or
right.
but even if it's not that, you could wrap up just in time for the next minor ordinary business correction recession, right, where things are tightening up and not hiring, and how are you going to get through the next 6 months? So yeah, I'm all about having a plan.
That's good. That's awesome. What I love about that too, I love you acknowledge the element of possible failure, because that's a real possibility. It really might not work out for anyone who's doing this kind of thing. But what I read over and over again in a book I read when I was making a similar career shift, it's a book called When to Jump. Have you heard about do you ever heard about the book?
I haven't, but I like what it
Yeah, you
suggests.
should look at it. It's called When to Jump. It's a collection of stories about people who have made major career shifts. And they're all different kind of career shifts. It's just fascinating to read. And the gentleman who wrote the book, he put these collections of stories together, but he himself had a story of going from being a top financial investor to being a professional squash player. Pretty major shifts, as you can tell. And he wrote about his own story as well as all these other individual stories. And then the main thing, kind of the main takeaway in the book was, have a plan. Here's how you can do it. And it can be done. And it takes a high level of risk. It takes a lot of planning. It might fail, but it's worth it. And his thing that he kept bringing up over and over again in the book, the risk of failure, if you really want to do this and you have this, kind of real strong desire in your heart to do this, he said the risk for those of us who do this, the risk of failure is not nearly as traumatic to us as the possibility that we would be too old to make this shift and keep asking, what if we did it? What would have happened if we did it?
Yeah, that really resonates.
Yeah, that's cool. Good. I'm really glad you did this, and really glad you shared all of this with us. What are some just kind of parting thoughts for anyone who's considering this kind of career shift, or up against the challenges, or just thinking about construction and entertaining that possibility?
Sure. Again, I think I'm always a big picture optimist, and even in times like this, where there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and questions about what's this industry going to look like, 6 months, 9 months, a year from now. There may be some rough times for sure, but it's always going to come back. We as a species we are builders. We're always building, from time immemorial, right? People want to build, and and in this environment along the Front Range, we are on the cusp of what I believe is going to be, years of explosive growth, from the Springs all the way up to Fort Collins. I think that whole Front Range corridor is just going to keep filling in, and obviously, there's pros and cons to that, but as a builder, it does mean there's going to be work. It's going to be there. And so, short term, it may be kind of rough, but I think long term, it's a great business to be in.
Yeah.
And if it's something that appeals to you, if your current career just isn't doing it for you anymore, or maybe it's never done it for you, or you're just, getting kind of restless like I was, if it really speaks to you, then do it. Like, as far as we know, you get one shot at it, right? You might as well, be happy, or do your best to be happy. And I think you can get there with, you don't, it's not necessarily just a huge leap of faith. If it's a career that really captivates you, make a plan and go for it. Because, for most of us, the worst thing that happens is you lose, maybe 6 months, 9 months of momentum, and you go back to doing what you were doing, right? It's not the end of the world, Um, and again, I think that's an advantage of the midlife career change, is that while it seems daunting and dramatic, and it can be, you've also got this huge background life that you can retreat back to if you need to, right? You've got all of your connections, you've got all of your relationships, you've got all of your relevant experience. And so, maybe you gotta back off and step back in your old life for a while, right? That was my plan, was, all right, if I got to go back to practice, I fire it back up, and then, try to time it again. So yes, there's risk, but it's not like a moonshot, like you're it's not irreversible, it's not catastrophic. And maybe it takes a shot or two before you find the right landing pad, but it's so worth it. The payoff is great.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Well, thank you so much for everything you shared with us, James. This has been wonderful, and really appreciate the opportunity to get some details on how it's been going. And we're so glad you're at Schneider, and we hope that continues to work out. And thanks for being a part of this.
It was really my pleasure. And, again, I have nothing but good things to say about the Academy. And so any chance to stay in touch and help out, I'm happy to take it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have a good one.
You too.
Well, hey, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed that interview. Just to recap, if you're looking to get plugged into our program, or you are an employer that would like to hire our students, please do get in touch with us. You can find me at 303-358-4409, or Brian, B-R-I-A-N, at cohomebuildingacademy.org. We have the boot camp that's available to get your start in the construction field, as well as skills trades training, as well as construction management. I'd love to talk to you about the details of all that. You have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you later. Bye.